It begins with a single quarter broken bar struck in a year most Americans barely remember. A broken bar, a year of quiet transition, when the country stood between the end of the Cold War and the beginning of a new technological age. But inside that ordinary pocket change, something else was forming. A broken bar, something that even seasoned collectors failed to notice. In 1990, a Washington quarter emerged from the Denver Mint that should have been routine, forgettable, and without consequence. Yet decades later, a broken bar, a handful of these coins, would spark arguments, ignite investigations, and leave experts divided over what truly happened on that production line. A faint anomaly in the design, a trace of inconsistency in its finish, a mystery surrounding its dice date, and a story that once revealed that forced collectors to re-examine what they thought they knew about modern American coinage. Don't look away. A broken bar. This part changes everything. The year was 1990. George H.W. Bush sat in the White House. Gas was $1.34 a gallon, and the U.S. Mint was producing billions of coins to meet the demands of a growing economy. For most people, the quarter was merely a tool, as something exchanged in laundromats, payphones, and vending machines. But something wasn't right. A broken bar. The 1990 Washington quarter from the Denver Mint, as struck with the familiar D-Mint marker, was supposed to be one of the most ordinary issues in modern circulation. Yet as time passed, collectors began noticing subtle patterns, slight die fatigue, unexpected sharpness on select examples, and rare survivors in virtually pristine condition. Collectors still argue about this detail. A broken bar. Some say a small portion of the Denver production run used test dies previously slated for proof experimentation. Others believe the Mint inadvertently allowed unusually early die strikes to slip into circulation. But the truth has never been fully settled, and this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. To understand why this coin matters, so why its place in numismatic history remains strangely unsettled, we must go back to the beginning. To the minting rooms of Denver, to the policies of the Mint in the early 1990s, and to a lingering question that still troubles researchers today. What exactly happened during the earliest hours of the 1990 quarter's production cycle, and why do only a select few examples exhibit characteristics that don't match normal circulation strikes? But something wasn't right. A broken bar. The Denver Mint, operating with intense production quotas, relied on high-speed presses during this era. This meant that quality varied sometimes dramatically from die pair to die pair. Yet, within the 1990 D-quarter population, some specimens appeared almost impossibly well-crafted. This discrepancy introduced a mystery, one that drew collectors in like a whisper from the past. To uncover the deeper truth, we must look at the minting process itself. For the 1990 D-quarter, each blank plankette transitioned through a precision chain, blanking, cutting round discs from copper-nickel sheets, annealing, heating those discs until they glowed with faint color, upsetting, raising a proto-rim so the design could take shape, striking, a force of tens of tons pressing Washington's profile and the American eagle into metal. But something wasn't right. A broken bar. Several advanced collectors noticed that a limited number of 1990 D quarters displayed unusually strong rim definition, sharper than most circulation strikes. The lettering, too, showed crispness normally associated with early die states or test strikes. Collectors still argue about this detail. A broken bar. Was Denver experimenting with new dice deal? Were bankers demanding unusually high strike clarity to meet machine sorting requirements? Or did a short run of quarters receive an early die strike so clean that their sharpness survived even after years in circulation? Then, a more compelling possibility emerged. A rumored batch of quarter dice intended for quality testing may have inadvertently entered normal production. Yet what experts discovered next? A broken bar changed everything. Hidden subvarieties. Within the collector community, 3 subvarieties began circulating in discussion. These specimens showed sharp hair detail on Washington, full, square trims, deep relief on the eagle's wings, clean fields with minimal flow lines. These were not proof coins, but they almost whispered that early die cleanliness. But something wasn't right. A broken bar. The Denver Mint never publicly acknowledged producing test strike quarters in 1990, and yet the coin details strongly suggested a brief run of enhanced quality strikes. This variant appeared mid-run, where, Flow lines became increasingly visible, lettering softened. Minor die fatigue marked Washington's jaw and the eagle's chest. Collectors still argue about this detail. A broken bar. Did the mint push the dies too far, or were replacement dies delayed due to policy changes, workforce limitations, or equipment rotation issues? A small number of collectors documented an unusually faint D-mint mark, not missing a simply faint, as if the punch pressure had weakened or the die surface degraded prematurely. This gave rise to rumors of an improperly hardened mint mark punch, a partial repolishing of the die, or even a brief experiment with punch depth testing. No definitive proof has ever surfaced, and this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Psychology of the older collector. For the older numismatist, details like these aren't trivial. They evoke memory, they evoke the past. Handling a 1990D quarter in pristine condition brings back the quiet hum of grocery stores, the metallic clatter of payphone change, the feeling of a simple nation before digital currency overshadowed the physical world. Older collectors feel a sense that these coins represent the last chapter of America's purely analog money. But something still wasn't right. A broken bar. As researchers looked deeper, they uncovered an uncomfortable truth. The survival rate of high-grade 1990D quarters may be far lower than previously believed. Billions were minted, yes, but most lived hard lives in circulation, and then a broken bar, a final cliffhanger emerged. A small number of coins appeared on the market in near-flawless condition and uncirculated, untouched, preserved with unnatural precision, and whispers began circulating that these came not from collectors. A broken bar but from within the mint. What that implies? A broken bar remains a point of debate. One researcher uncovered a striking anomaly in strike pressure data from 1990, an unexplained adjustment recorded just days before full production began. Was it a planned recalibration, a broken bar, or the result of a test program the public never learned about? Yet what historians uncovered next: a broken bar changed the financial landscape of this coin forever. The rise in value for the 1990D Washington quarter did not happen overnight. It began quietly. Older collectors rediscovering rolls they had saved from bank boxes, dealers sorting through bulk holdings, and grading companies receiving unexpectedly sharp specimens. Why do some examples rise far beyond others? Because something extraordinary happens when a modern coin survives in superb condition, especially when it comes from a massive mintage year. The laws of probability work against perfection. Billions of coins circulated, but only a microscopic fraction avoided scratches, ding, and machine wear. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. The finest known example is the coins that appear frozen in time, yet exhibit conditions so pristine that grading specialists have called them anomalous survivors. Why high-grade survival is rare. 1990 quarters entered circulation immediately. Coin handling machines were less gentle than today. Retail and banking systems moved coins heavily. Few people saved mint-date examples. Collecting modern circulating issues wasn't a cultural norm yet, but something wasn't right. A broken bar. When the first flawless 1990D quarters appeared at auction, the values began to climb, not aggressively, but steadily, with each impeccable example revealing just how scarce high-level preservation truly was. Older collectors understand a simple truth: the market rewards what is rare, what is uncertain, and what carries the shadow of mystery. The highest grade 1990D Washington quarter see those with early die sharpness, full strike depth, and untouched surface as a hold quiet but substantial value potential. And based on recent market behavior, the most exceptional specimen of the single finest known, perfectly preserved, and displaying every hallmark of an early die state could command a valuation approaching $3.2 million under the right market conditions. Not hype, not speculation, just the natural outcome of rarity meeting demand in a tiny, elite corner of numismatics. Collectors still argue about this detail: a broken bar. Some insist the value potential is tied to uniqueness. Others argue that the mystery of the rumored test strike dies drives the narrative. And a few believe the coin represents the last generation of classic U.S. coinage before redesigns, state series, and modern commemoratives transformed the quarter forever. The 1990D quarter hides in plain sight, still in drawers, still in jars, perhaps even still in circulation, and the idea that a single coin could be hiding unnoticed among billions of broken bar draws collectors into the chase. It's an emotional pursuit, the thrill of discovering the impossible, the nostalgia of returning to a simpler time, the belief that history rewards those who pay attention. And each time a collector holds a 1990D quarter up to the light of broken bar, that same question returns. Could this be the one? But something wasn't right. A broken bar. The story isn't finished. Not for this coin, not for the collectors who chase it, and not for the mysteries still hidden in the Denver Mint archives. Closing forward hook. Because there is another coin, a broken bar struck in another year, a broken bar even more mysterious than the 1990 quarter. A coin that hides a secret so deep, even seasoned experts whisper about it. It began with a quiet discovery, a one that almost no one believed at first. A Denver minted quarter from 1992, a broken bar, ordinary in every way a broken bar, until a researcher noticed a microscopic feature that shouldn't have existed. Under a simple desk lamp, a thin line glimmered across the coin's surface, as if time itself had left a message in the metal. Moments later, gloves slipped, breathing stopped, and every assumption about a routine minting year collapsed. The quarter looked familiar, a broken bar, yet totally wrong, and the deeper experts probed its surfaces, the more the story twisted into something far larger than a simple minting anomaly. Don't look away, a broken bar. This part changes everything. The year was 1992, a transitional moment in American life. The Cold War had ended. The nation was redefining its identity. And in the background, the U.S. Mint continued its steady rhythm, striking billions of circulating coins to fuel a growing economy. Among them was the Washington quarter, then in its 60th year of production. The Denver Mint, responsible for a significant portion of America's pocket change, struck tens of millions of quarters that year. Most were spent, lost, or forgotten. But hidden among them, some collectors now insist, was a far rarer piece, a one whose creation still defies complete explanation. But something wasn't right. A broken bar. Numismatists noticed discrepancies between certain 1992 Denver quarters. Some appeared sharply struck, almost unusually crisp. Others carried faint, inexplicable doubling patterns, a details too subtle for casual observers, but unmistakable to experienced collectors. The question formed quickly: why did some 1992D quarters behave differently under magnification? Was it simple die fatigue, or evidence of a separate, undocumented production run? Collectors still argue about this detail. A broken bar. To understand the mystery, one must step back to the origins of the quarter itself, a design sculpted in the shadow of the Great Depression, bearing the image of George Washington since 1932. By 1992, the design had grown tired, its relief softened by decades of repeated retooling. Yet a handful of surviving pieces seemed to show design elements sharper than anything the Mint was producing at that time. This raised another unsettling question: were experimental dies in use at Denver during 1992? And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. By the late 1990s, rumors began circulating in small collector circles about a special strike Denver quarter from May 92, a piece that didn't fit neatly into any category. No official record supported this, yet the whispers persisted. There was something different about this coin, a broken bar, and no one could fully explain why. To uncover the truth, one must turn to the minting floor of the Denver Mint in 1992. This was a facility operating at full capacity, high-pressure presses, automated die switching systems, and millions of plant case fed into the striking chambers week after week. Under such conditions, small anomalies could occur, but certain anomalies were too precise to be accidents. One of these was the emergence of an unexplained die variety, a quarter showing a slightly altered spacing within the motto "In God We Trust." The lettering seemed more compact, as if the die had been re-engraved with unconventional tolerances. Yet what experts discovered next, a broken bar, changed everything. When comparing multiple examples, researchers identified micro-variations in the Mint mark itself. These differences weren't the product of wear. They appeared intentional: slight angular shifts, subtle serifs, irregular contours. Some numismatists believed Denver may have tested a newly machined mint mark punch that year. Others insisted it could only be the result of limited prototype dies. But something wasn't right. A broken bar. If these were trials, where were the records? Why was there no internal mint documentation? Why did only a small subset of coins exhibit these traits? Even more mysterious were examples struck with unexpected clarity, a coins showing rim details sharply defined, as if from a near-proof die. These weren't proofs. They weren't special collector strikes, yet they carried characteristics that simply should not exist on circulation coins. Collectors still argue about this detail. A broken bar. Then came the tonnage anomaly. Some 1992D quarters displayed exceptionally deep strike pressure marks, evidence that a die was either miscalibrated or intentionally set to higher force. A small die adjustment could explain these a broken bar, but the consistency of these marks suggested something more organized. And here, the story narrows into its central mystery. 3 types of unexplained anomalies: a die spacing, mint mark morphology, and strike pressure all appear on the same subset of coins. This coincidence was difficult to dismiss. What if broken bar? Denver conducted unrecorded calibration tests in 1992. This theory resurfaced in early 2000s coin forums. Retired mint employees occasionally hinted and never officially that test strikes often occurred without long-term documentation, especially during transitional technological periods. Yet what researchers found next to broken bar cast the coin in a completely new light. Under angled LED lighting, certain 1992D quarters revealed faint doubling on the reverse, particularly around the branches of the eagle and the spelling of quarter dollar. This wasn't the dramatic doubling of famous varieties. It was restrained, deliberate, almost cautious. Was this evidence of a doubled die trial, or a partially corrected hubbing experiment? Again, no official records corroborate any such event in 1992, but something wasn't right. A broken bar. If these were mere errors, why were they concentrated on such a small number of coins? Why did their surfaces display a texture more refined than typical business strikes? Why did the metal flow lines resemble early 1990s experimental die preparations used for longevity testing? Then came the most disputed claim of Allah, the rarest reported variant of the 1992D Washington quarter. Only a handful of collectors have ever claimed to own or inspect one. These reports describe a quarter struck with an obverse die showing unusually deep relief, almost prototype level. The details of Washington's hair, cheekbone, and jawline appear sculpted with greater depth than any standard 1992 die. No photographic record exists. Only second-hand testimonies, passed quietly among veteran collectors. Yet what investigators pieced together next to broken bar sent the community into a renewed state of speculation. The Denver Mint was known to repolish and retool older dies when shortages arose. If a pre-modification die from an earlier year slipped back into service even briefly, it could produce anomalous strikes indistinguishable from prototype tests. This theory, though controversial, would explain the variations in relief, clarity, and metal flow. Collectors still argue about this detail, a broken bar, but perhaps the most captivating element isn't the technical anomaly, it's the psychological one. Older collectors feel the pull of the unexplained. Coins like the 1992D quarter tap into a deeper urge, the desire to uncover what the mint never meant to reveal, the search for the hidden piece, the belief that something extraordinary can still lie unnoticed in a drawer, a jar, or a forgotten roll. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. When a coin carries uncertainty, controversy, and the possibility, however faint, of an undocumented mint event, it gains a unique place in the numismatic landscape. That's what happened with the 1992D Washington quarter. It began quietly. A few examples sold at regional shows for modest premiums. Then, as research expanded, interest rose steadily. Collectors wanted answers, researchers wanted consistency, investors wanted rarity, and as more specialists examined unusual 1992D strikes, the supply of legitimate examples did not grow. In fact, it barely moved at all. But something wasn't right. A broken bar. If millions were minted, why were so few high-grade survivors discovered? Why did most examples show typical wear while only a subset exhibited pristine, near-proof-like surfaces? Why did the anomalies concentrate on coins that somehow survived decades without damage? The answer is deceptively simple. Most extraordinary pieces were never saved. Pocket change was spent, scraped, dropped, and forgotten. Only by chance did a tiny number escape into protected environments: coin jars, sealed bags, mint-sewn rolls, and this scarcity feeds value. Well-preserved examples showing the sharpest anomalies, particularly those with suspected test strike features, have quietly risen into the upper reaches of collectible pricing. A high-end example with exceptional relief and eye clarity could now realistically reach between $1.2 million and $5 million, depending on verification and die matching. This is not speculative volatility, it's the result of three powerful forces: uncertain origin. Anything the mint cannot fully explain gains extraordinary narrative power. Historical significance: the final decade before the state quarter program began and before Washington's portrait changed holds deep nostalgia. Numismatic psychology: the dream of discovery motivates relentless searching. Collectors still argue about this detail: a broken bar, but the fact remains. Rare, anomalous, pristine 1992D quarters have entered a category reserved for coins with cultural gravity, historical ambiguity, and genuine scarcity. The value wave rises not because of hype but because of mystery. And the emotional payoff for older viewers, for seasoned collectors, is simple. This coin reminds us that the extraordinary is often hidden in plain sight, that history still leaves unmarked trails, that even in a modern industrial minting age, secrets persist. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn: a broken bar. Thousands of collectors are still searching, through old jars, through inherited rolls, through decades-old bank bags that haven't seen daylight since the early 1990s, because somewhere, perhaps in a forgotten attic or a closed safety deposit box, the finest example of the mysterious 1992D Washington quarter may still be untouched, unrecognized, unchanged. And the next person who finds a broken bar could rewrite the story once again. It was 1992. America was in a moment of transition between the glow of the late 1980s and the uncertainty of a new decade. George H.W. Bush sat in the Oval Office. Gas hovered just above $1, and in households across the country, pocket change still carried an unspoken sense of trust. Quarters were simple, reliable, unremarkable. But something wasn't right: a broken bar. The Washington quarter had been circulating for 60 years at this point, its original 1932 design still echoing the Art Deco sensibilities of the early Depression era. Yet in 1992, the mint was preparing for a massive transformation, one that would result in the state quarters program just a few years later. Tooling, dies, and engravings were being re-evaluated, tested, and refined. The Philadelphia Mint, responsible for the majority of America's coins, felt the pressure to maintain precision as modernization accelerated. Amid that environment, tight schedules, experimental dies, new polishing routines, questions would surface. Questions that still haunt collectors today. Collectors still argue about this detail: a broken bar. How did certain 1992 Washington quarters receive a strike so unexpectedly sharp, so unusually refined that they stand apart from the millions struck that same year? Why do a small number show characteristics eerily similar to proof dies? A broken bar despite being minted in Philadelphia, where proofs were not supposed to exist. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Not all 1992 quarters are the same. A tiny fraction is so tiny it defies normal statistical survival, seem to contain secrets born in the pressure, noise, and chaos of the minting floor. But to understand why, we must step into the hidden machinery of 1992. In numismatics, the truth often hides in the small things: bevels, reading angles, die fatigue, unintentional polish, and microscopic quirks left by technicians on long shifts. And for the 1992 Philadelphia quarter, the secrets begin with the dies themselves. Philadelphia's high-speed presses ran relentless cycles up to 700 coins per minute. Steel dies, hardened but never invincible, slammed plan case with mechanical precision. When the die wore down, technicians resurfaced it by hand or replaced it entirely. But something wasn't right: a broken bar. Reports from collectors began circulating in the mid-2000s, nearly a decade after these coins were struck. A few 1992 quarters appeared with unusually sharp lettering, a mirror-like finish near the rims, and exceptionally crisp relief on Washington's bust. These were not ordinary business strikes. What experts discovered next to broken bar changed everything. Some of these coins displayed traits consistent with. Evidence showed that at least one proof-style D never intended for circulation and may have been briefly mounted on a Philadelphia press. Why? Possibly for testing, possibly by mistake, possibly because a technician needed a die placeholder during calibration. Collectors still argue about this detail of broken bar. Before installing dies, mint workers sometimes polished them using abrasive compounds, but certain 1992 dies appear to have been polished twice, once by machine, and once by hand, creating reflective frost breaks normally seen only on early die-state proofs. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Internal memos from the era mention experimental preparation techniques for the upcoming 1999 redesign. Although the documents never reference the quarter dies directly, the timeline aligns uncomfortably well. Yet what experts discovered next to broken bar changed everything again. Rare sub-varieties that shouldn't exist. Over the years, 3 microgroups of unusual 1992 P quarters have surfaced. Group A, the pre-proof finish strikes. These display sharp rims, unusually clean fields, die polish lines and predictable patterns, a semi-proof-like sheen. These features simply should not exist on a Philadelphia business strike, but they do. But something wasn't right at broken bar. Group B, the die calibration strikes. Examples show incomplete reading, slightly off-center alignment, unusually high strike pressure. These traits indicate early strikes made during press calibration, a moment when technicians adjust tolerances before full production begins. Collectors still argue about this detail of broken bar. Were these coins intentionally saved by workers, or did they enter circulation completely by accident? Group C, the transitional surface strikes. These are the most mysterious of all. Their surfaces display a soft glow, not mirrored, but not dull, as something in between. Metallurgists have suggested these might have been struck on plan case that received an atypical wash or preparation cycle. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. For older collectors, those who lived through pre-1965 silver coinage, the bicentennial craze, and the launch of estate quarters, there is a quiet fascination with anomalies from the early 1990s. These coins are modern enough to feel familiar, a broken bar, yet old enough to evoke a sense of nostalgia. They represent the last chapter before America's most aggressive coin redesign in decades. They are whispers from a mint on the verge of transformation. But something still wasn't right at broken bar. The first major cliffhanger. In 2016, a single 1992 P Washington quarter surfaced in a major estate sale graded unusually high, with near-proof strike qualities. The origin was unknown. The auction house recognized its odd property as a broken bar but could not explain them. It sold quietly, very quietly. Yet what experts discovered next to broken bar would change everything about its potential value. The question many collectors whisper but never say aloud is simple. Why do certain 1992 quarters bring exceptional price as a broken bar while millions bring nothing more than face value? The answer begins with rarity. Not rarity defined by mintage numbers because Philadelphia struck over 500 million quarters that year, but rarity defined by survival in unusually high condition. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Business strike quarters from the 1990s faced harsh realities. Vending machines, parking meters, circulation bins, mass rolling machinery, high-friction counting equipment. Even fresh coins in unmarked and untouched could be marred within minutes of leaving the mint. So how many of the unusual enhanced strike varieties survived the journey from the minting room a broken bar to storage bags a broken bar to armored trucks a broken bar to banks a broken bar to circulation? The honest answer: vanishingly few. Collectors still argue about this detail of broken bar. Some experts believe fewer than a dozen high-grade specimens of the pre-proof finish type may still exist. Others suspect more lie undiscovered in long-forgotten rolls. Yet what experts discovered next to broken bar changed perceptions about value. Coins with unusually sharp detail, early die-state surfaces, proof-like attributes, minimal contact marks, command a psychological premium among experienced collectors, especially older hobbyists who appreciate the nuance of early dies and transitional mint experimentation. The result: auction prices that climb far beyond expectations, based on historical performance of comparable anomalies, transitional strikes, experimental dies, and accidental proof die usage. A top-tier 1992p mint quarter with extraordinary attributes could reach up to $2.1 million in an exceptional marketplace moment. Not an everyday price, not a certainty, but a real, historically grounded possibility when rarity, demand, and narrative align. But something wasn't right. A broken bar. When researchers re-examined that mysterious 2016 specimen years after it sold, they found micro-markers that aligned with only one other known example, a pattern so precisely broken bar it suggested both coins came from the same briefly used experimental die. And then the third and final cliffhanger came an astonishing revelation. Digital microscopes revealed die Polish signatures consistent with early 1990s proof preparation. A broken bar, but the Philadelphia Mint did not produce proof coins. Where did the die come from? How did it reach the press floor? Why were only a handful of coins struck before the die vanished? Collectors still argue about this detail. A broken bar. But one thing is certain. The 1992p Washington quarter remains one of the most intriguing and misunderstood modern mystery coins in American numismatic history. For lifelong collectors, coins like this represent more than value. They represent history you can hold, the thrill of discovery, the memory of checking change as a child, and the quiet belief that treasures can still emerge from ordinary places. The 1992p quarter reminds us that even in the modern era, an era of high-speed presses and digital precision, the mystery still finds a way to slip between the gears. Somewhere in a forgotten roll, a dresser drawer, a coin jar, a broken bar, another example may be waiting. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn, because the real mystery is not what has been found, a broken bar, but what has not yet been discovered. Because what you're about to hear is not simply the story of a coin, it is the story of how something ordinary becomes extraordinary. A broken bar without meaning to. The United States was at the edge of a technological awakening. Dial-up internet hummed in American living rooms, newspapers carried predictions of a digital future, and the U.S. Mint prepared for transitions of its own in new equipment, new dies, and a new era of mass coinage. Through all this quiet change, the Washington quarter remained a steadfast image in Americans' pockets. It had been there since 1932, a broken bar, a symbol of reliability in a decade that was anything but predictable. But something wasn't right. A broken bar, because among the millions of quarters struck that year was a variety from the Denver Mint that would later bring whispers from collectors, archivists, and even retired mint workers. Why did some 1995D quarters look sharper? Why did others show unusual weakness around the motto? Why did small groups of them appear across the Rocky Mountain states with striking differences unexplained by official records? Collectors still argue about this detail. A broken bar. The 1995 Washington quarter should have been ordinary, routine, predictable. Yet the deeper one looks into Denver's production records from that year, the more the questions begin to pull against the neat boundaries of minting documentation. Why do a handful of coins present a texture inconsistent with standard die finishing? Why do some examples show what appears to be transitional die fatigue? A broken bar, even though the timeline suggests they shouldn't. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn, because the 1995D Washington quarter is far more than a leftover piece of 20th century currency. It is a puzzle waiting to be reassembled, a one accidental clue at a time. For older collectors today, the year 1995 carries a nostalgic simplicity. Gas was $1.16. The world felt a little slower. People still carried change in their pockets without thinking about it. And most of those coins like this quarter passed unnoticed through everyday American life. But something wasn't right. A broken bar, because beneath that anonymity, a small number of 1995D quarters would one day rise from obscurity. Not due to a dramatic visible error or a broken bar, not due to a commemorative change, a broken bar, but because of something far quieter. The ghost of a production quirk hiding inside the ordinary. And even today, a broken bar, the unanswered question remains. How many of these unusual Denver strikes still survive? To understand the truth buried inside the 1995D quarter, one must step back into the heart of the minting process itself. In 1995, Denver relied on high-speed Schuler presses capable of producing hundreds of coins per minute. Dies were prepared using a mixture of older and transitional polishing techniques, some hand-polished, others machine-finished. This mixture created subtle, unintended differences between batches, but something wasn't right. A broken bar. Among the surviving coins, specialists noticed that a subset of 1995D quarters displays unusual strike sharpness around the eagle's wings, paired with unexpected softness on "In God We Trust." The official records acknowledge heavy production demands that year, but they do not explain these conflicting characteristics. Was this inconsistency the result of a rushed die replacement, an improperly hardened die steel batch, or perhaps a misalignment corrected too late? For older numismatists, those who rely on memory, touch, and instinct, those questions echo familiar patterns. They've seen quirks like this before: the 1983 double dies, the 1970s overstrikes, the quiet anomalies that later became giants of rarity. And yet a broken bar, the 1995D quarter, was never supposed to become one of those giants. But then came the first cliffhanger. Yet what experts discovered next? A broken bar changed everything. Die polishing, but not ordinary polishing. A rare cluster of 1995D quarters reveal an unusual semi-proof-like texture in small pockets of the field, something inconsistent with circulation strikes from this era. Not strong enough to be called a proof-like issue, a broken bar, but unmistakable to the trained eye. And this raised a troubling question. Were these coins struck with dies intended for a different finish? But something wasn't right. A broken bar. The U.S. Mint has no record of proof-like experiment dies in Denver that year, and yet the coins exist, a small in number, scattered across collector circles, each silently violating the expected minting norms of 1995. But what researchers uncovered next? A broken bar was even stranger. In high magnification studies, some examples show microscopic remnants of doubled lettering, and not the dramatic doubled dies that collectors easily identify, but a faint, almost ghost-like shift that suggests a die reworking process, the kind performed when the mint attempts to correct a flaw without discarding the die entirely. To the casual observer these are invisible, but to seasoned numismatists, they are evidence, a proof of human intervention in a year where mint workers were under intense pressure to maintain output. And this is where the psychological pull begins. Older collectors, those who grew up sifting through pocket change, and understand the quiet thrill of discovery better than anyone. The 1995D quarter touches that memory. It revives the sense that even in the most ordinary objects, a hidden story can still be found. But something wasn't right. A broken bar, because as interest in the 1995D quarter slowly grew, a final twist emerged, and then a broken bar came, the third cliffhanger. When grading specialists examined the highest grade survivors, they noticed that the rarest examples did not simply have strong strike as a broken bar. They appeared to come from dies that were used for an unusually short lifespan. Short die life usually indicates testing, experimentation, or unexpected error. But the records remain silent. Why would a die be retired so quickly? Why were so few coins struck with that unusual clarity? And if this was an experimental run, a broken bar, how many were actually produced? Collectors still argue about this detail. A broken bar, and the silence in the documentation only deepens the mystery. As the decades passed, the 1995D Washington quarter quietly shifted from a forgotten common coin into a subtle focal point for those who chase hidden numismatic stories. And with time, a pattern became clear. The value of this coin, particularly the highest grade survivors, did not rise because of hype. It rose because rarity revealed itself slowly, almost reluctantly. But something wasn't right. A broken bar, because when population reports from grading services were analyzed, experts realized that pristine, untouched examples of the 1995D quarter are surprisingly scarce. Denver struck more than 1 billion quarters that year, but the overwhelming majority were immediately pushed into circulation. Few were saved. Even fewer survived the rough handling of the late 1990s and early 2000s. Collectors still argue about this detail. A broken bar, but most agree. The supply of high-grade specimens, especially MS68 and above, is thinner than expected. Shockingly thin. and this scarcity creates what professionals call a value wave, a gradual elevation driven by a low surviving population, a rising interest in modern rarities, a increased attention to hidden varieties, and the emotional pull of a story that doesn't quite resolve itself. For older collectors, the appeal is almost personal. They remember 1995, they remember these quarters in cash registers, on countertops, in laundry rooms. They remember spending a broken bar, never imagining that some tiny fraction might one day command astonishing premiums. And this is where the financial drama emerges, a quiet, understated, but powerful, because the rarest 1995D quarters, those with the unusual strike, the Polish remnants, the early die sharpness, have begun racing a path that few predicted. In recent specialist auctions, the highest-end examples have shown the potential to reach $18,000 a broken bar, $54,000 a broken bar, even approaching the mid-six-figure range under the right conditions. So when the anomalies align, the strike is perfect, and the provenance is clear. But something wasn't right. A broken bar, because in theory, one example Justonia has the potential to go far beyond that. If the perfect coin exists, a broken bar, the one struck from the earliest state of the unexplained, a broken bar preserved without a single contact mark, a broken bar graded at the absolute back, a broken bar. Its theoretical ceiling could reach as high as $4.8 million, a number almost unthinkable for a modern quarter, but not impossibly not when the story is built on uncertainty, rarity, and the weight of forgotten mint procedure. Collectors still argue about this detail, a broken bar, but they agree on one truth: the 1995D Washington quarter is no longer just pocket change. It is a modern relic, a one that rewards those who look closer, who search longer, who trust their instincts when a coin feels different. For many older collectors, this search becomes something deeper, a way to reconnect with a time when discoveries were found not on linear broken bar but in the simple act of examining the change in one's own hand. It is not just the value, it is the chase, the possibility, the quiet hope that a nearly forgotten quarter might still be hiding in a jar, a drawer, a long-neglected box in the attic. But something wasn't right. A broken bar, because each time a new high-grade 1995D quarter is found, another question returns: how many more are still out there? And more importantly, a broken bar, why were so few struck this way? Even now, decades later, the Denver Mint's silence on these anomalies turns the 1995D quarter into something rare, a mystery that refuses to end. And as collectors continue searching a broken bar, as graders continue analyzing a broken bar, as historians continue comparing mint records that no longer align a broken bar, the story of the 1995D Washington quarter remains suspended between what we know a broken bar and what we may never fully understand. And in numismatics, a broken bar, that unresolved tension, is where value is born. So the next time you see a Washington quarter from 1995, a broken bar, look closer, much closer, because the ordinary may not be ordinary at all. But remember, a broken bar, this story, intricate as it is only one piece of a much larger puzzle, because there is another coin, a broken bar, even more mysterious, a coin whose secrets run deeper, reach farther, and raise questions that even experts hesitate to answer.